Society Matters.
Hello and welcome to another installment of Legacy Chronicles. My name is Zachary Graulich and I'm the Assistant Director of Education here at hmTV. Today on Legacy Chronicles, we are honored to welcome Doron Keren, a second-generation Holocaust descendant whose work is helping ensure that one family story of survival continues to educate and resonate across generations. Doron is the grandson of Legacy Chiger, whose memoir, Beneath the Lightless Sky, chronicles the extraordinary survival of his family in the sewers of Nazi-occupied Lviv, and the son of Krystyna, known as Krystyna Chiger, co-author of The Girl in the Green Sweater. As the torch passes from survivors to their descendants, Doron has taken on the vital role of preserving, publishing, and sharing his family's legacy at a time when historical truth and memory are more important than ever. Doron, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, and thank you for having me, Zach.
Absolutely.
I'm honored to be here.
Absolutely. It's such a pleasure. You are a member of our second generation community here, and we are really proud to support you and all the work that you're doing, your mom and your family. And I'd love to just jump right in and talk to you a little bit about that.
Let's unpack it.
So to start, for our listeners who are not familiar with you and your family story, would you be able to share briefly your family's survival story and what that looks like?
So my family's Holocaust story is one of survival against impossible odds. It's also a story of a hero of the Holocaust, not a victim. My grandfather, Legacy Chiger, was a Jewish businessman in Lviv, Poland. When the Nazis liquidated the ghetto, he orchestrated the escape of his family, including my grandmother, my mother, who was then 7, her brother was 3 years old, and several others into this city's sewers. They lived underground for more than a year, 14 months to be exact, in total darkness, filth, hunger, and constant fear. They were helped by a Polish Catholic sewer worker named Leopold Socha. That sewer became both a graveyard and a sanctuary. My mother survived as a child in that darkness. My grandfather survived to tell the story. So 1975, 30 years after the end of the war, for the very first time, my grandfather sat down in front of a Polish typewriter and wrote his extraordinary detailed memoir, From Memory. 6 months later, he died. I grew up knowing that my very existence is the result of courage, ingenuity, and extraordinary will to live.
So obviously, as you said, you grew up knowing these stories. You knew your family were survivors. It was no secret for you. But obviously, later on in your life is when your mom first started to share her story with the world, really. So what was that like for you to firsthand watch your mom come into her own and publish a book about her experiences?
I was incredibly proud of her, deeply proud. For my mother, telling her story was never easy. Every time she spoke or wrote about it, she wasn't just recounting history. She was reliving trauma. That fear, the hunger, the loss, the darkness, those memories never leave you. And yet, she chose to speak. She chose to testify, watching her do that again and again with grace and strength, knowing the emotional cost, showed me what real courage looks like. Not the absence of pain, but the willingness to face it so others can learn.
So obviously you had this sense of pride, but as the second generation, and because of your grandfather, a third generation as well in many ways,
Correct.
Did you always feel a responsibility for yourself to share this history for the world to see? Or did you feel that, they were the ones who lived through it? They were the survivors. It's theirs to tell. So kind of talk me through that experience.
Well, not just responsibility. I feel a sense of duty. I mean, my grandfather was an agent of history. He didn't just want to share this story with his family. And when you grow up in a family like mine, you understand very early that these stories were not meant to stay private. They were preserved for a reason. Survivors didn't endure the endurable, so history could fade into abstraction. With my mother's story reaching classrooms, museums, and even film, and with our family artifacts permanently housed in Yad Vashem, United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, and hopefully one day here at hmTV, the baton was clearly being passed. My role is to ensure these stories continue to be told accurately, humanly, and urgently, especially as we lose survivors and confront denial and distortion.
So how did you see yourself kind of coming into this role of sharing your family story in the way that you are now? Did you always know it would be in this capacity, or what did you think when you thought of the future and your role as a 2G?
I always thought that I would tell the story, but I really didn't know how or when. You know, as anti-Semitism has risen over the last several years, though, something shifted in me. The stakes became clear. When lies spread faster than truth, silence becomes dangerous. So sharing real stories, personal stories, names, faces, choices, it cuts through all that distortion. My family story is an ideology. It's a lived experience. And today, more than ever, the world needs to be reminded of what happened when hate is normalized and the truth is ignored.
And if I can ask you, what has this experience been like for you to, you've been working very hard for a number of years on getting your grandfather's memoir to be published in English for the first time. That's been, I'm sure, a very long and difficult process in many ways, but I'm sure very rewarding. So what has it been like for you to be involved in this process?
So it's been a profoundly meaningful and humbling journey. Immersing myself in my grandfather's memoir was like having an extended conversation with him across time. I came to understand not just what he survived, but how he thought, his ingenuity, his moral calculations, his relentless responsibility for family. From the moment he woke up, it was about planning, building, hiding, moving, running. Bringing Beneath the Lightless Sky to an English-speaking audience felt like completing a circle. His voice, it was calm, precise, unsentimental, now stands alongside my mother's, offering a rare dual perspective. An adult architect of survival and a child who lived inside its consequences. I feel enormous pride in helping ensure his testimony endures.
So you now have these two incredible publications from your family.
Yes.
And one from the eyes of a child and one from a grown-up's perspective. Can you talk a little bit about the similarities and the differences for our audiences who may kind of think, well, it's the same story, which one do I read, or why should I read both?
Well, I had spoken to Dan Paisner a while back when he first read, I sent him a PDF version of Beneath the Lightless Sky. He calls me up and goes, I can't believe I'm reading about the same story because it's completely different. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So in one scene, when the SS officer came to pilfer what was left of their apartment, he saw that there was a grand piano. And as I guess a piano player, a lover of playing piano, he sat down and started to play. My mother, then, about a 6-year-old child, was sitting underneath the piano. So her version, her perspective, was she was listening to beautiful music and watching the reflection of his boots in the shiny reflection of the piano keys, piano, pedals.
Yeah.
My grandfather's perspective, same situations, exact same scene. He's standing with, over the SS officer. He can't wait to have him leave because if you say the wrong thing, you die.
Yeah. So
he was negotiating on how to, get him to take the piano, which he wanted. And you see the same scene, but completely different perspective.
Yeah.
There was another scene in the book where deep in the bowels of the sewer, one of the survivors, a member of the 10 who survived, she was pregnant, but she hid her pregnancy underneath a large coat. She didn't want to tell anyone she was pregnant because they wouldn't take her down into the sewer if they knew. But when it was too late to not reveal that she was pregnant, she wound up giving birth, and my grandfather, took on a new role of gynecologist, OBGYN. He delivered the baby. And then his perspective's like, well, the baby's cries would give them all away. So the mother decided to take her own baby's life. And we just wrapped the baby and we let it go into the sewer. While my mother talks about it in just a more emotional sense, she thought this baby was going to be someone that she could, play with, essentially. And she was incredibly saddened by its loss.
So it's interesting, as you're saying, it's the same events, but differing perspectives. And I'd love to know if I'm sure you've had conversations over the years with your mom about this, what has that been like for her? Because this is not the first time that your grandfather's memoir has been published. It's just the first time it's been published in English. So she's read it, I'm sure, several times over the years. How has that been for her, if you've ever had that conversation with her about those differences and differing perspectives?
I think when she read his memoir, and his memoir was actually published in Polish in 2011, 3 years after her book was published. Before that, she had papers strewn all over the place when she was working on her own publication. Obviously, it was all in Polish, written on a typewriter. And she's cherry-picking certain events that she remembered. And that's what she used in her book. I think that when she read his version, she put her own spin on it because it reminded her of what she knew and what she remembered. So when she wrote her book, it was really from a child's perspective.
Absolutely.
The same version, different perspective.
And it's interesting that you mentioned the scene within the book where the Nazi comes in, starts playing the piano. And I shared this with you recently, but I think our audience will find it interesting that just about a month ago, I was at Yad Vashem in Jerusalem, and I'm getting a guided tour. I'm with a group of educators, and our tour guide, out of nowhere, just mentions, as we're kind of maybe like a quarter of the way through the museum, and we're talking about the era where the Nazis are going into Jewish homes, businesses, and just taking whatever they want. And the tour guide goes, "Has anybody read Girl in the Green Sweater?" And they start, and she talks about that exact scene. I mean, it's such a profound scene for so many reasons. And I think part of it is because of the perspective that it's written from the eyes of a child who really doesn't know any better or know otherwise. It really doesn't understand what's going on, at least the gravity of the situation. But the fact that we're talking about it here in New York, and we're talking about it in Jerusalem, and we're talking about it, I mean, your mom's publication is very well known in the Holocaust world. And so to add a secondary perspective, I think, is really going to be transformative for people who already are familiar with your mom's memoir, which I'm sure was part of what you were going for in the work you've put in to get your grandfather's book to be published, right?
Yes. I mean, I love the idea of bookending, let's call it, the story from a child's perspective and an adult's perspective. I mean, someone who orchestrated the escape, who spent every waking moment planning on how to stay alive. And a child's perspective who, it's not that she came from ignorance. She knew what was going on. She understood fully well the gravity of the situation. As a matter of fact, she would tell me that her parents, practiced with her and her brother what to do in the event that the Nazis were going to come, either Gestapo, SS, Wehrmacht, were going to come to the apartment, because that is exactly what happened. So when my grandmother and my grandfather had to go to work for better part of the entire day in forced labor, they hid inside the apartment by themselves, my mother and her brother. And whenever my mother would say she could ID the different branches of the Germans' war machine. She knew what the SS boots sounded like. She knew what the Gestapo boots sounded like. So she knew who was coming. And she would hide my brother, her brother, then less than 3 years old. Maybe he was 2 at the time, maybe even younger, in a suitcase with holes in it under the bed. she would run and get behind her hiding spot. Yeah. So these were scenes that are never going to leave her memory.
Absolutely. And to this day, she's still actively speaking and participating in programs and sharing these stories and these memories of hers with people of all ages. Though, as you said, it's not easy for her.
No, I mean, she in a sense, her childhood was robbed. Yeah. She became an adult very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, understandably. So as we look to the future, because of course we are blessed that your mom is still here and speaking and sharing her story through a multitude of different programs, most recently Witness Project. She's been involved with multiple times a month, meeting with high school students and speaking with them, and I have the pleasure of working with her through that program. We have to look to the future, and that's, of course, what you've been doing. That's why you have been spending all this time and work and effort to get your grandfather's memoir to be published. But of course, it doesn't end with you. It can't end with the second generation because there are many, many more years and generations to come. So I'd love for you to share who else in your family is involved in Holocaust education in any sort of way. Do you see your own kids kind of carrying the torch eventually? If you could talk about that.
Yes, and that may be the most meaningful part of all of this. Both my sons, Jonathan and Daniel, grew up knowing these stories intimately, not as distant history, but as family memory. Daniel, in particular, is actively involved as a member of 3G NY and participates in their We Do program, where he shares a family's survival story with elementary, middle, and high school students. Watching the third generation speak, not from trauma, but from inheritance, really gives me hope. It tells me these stories won't end with us. They will evolve, but they will endure.
Absolutely. So as we kind of wrap things up here, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the next steps for you, because your grandfather's memoir is not even officially published or available for another couple of weeks. And I know you have a lot of events where you're planning, especially locally, to be speaking publicly, sharing your grandfather and, of course, your mother's experiences, talking about the memoir. So what would you like to see for the future of Holocaust education in general, and also for your own family and sharing these memoirs with the wider audiences out there?
First, for Holocaust education in general, I think that 2Gs and 3Gs and 4Gs need to publish, need to get these stories out there to the general audience, whether it's through books, through films, through documentaries. Now, myself personally, I started this journey a couple of years ago with the idea, and after I read my grandfather's memoir and the rich detail it had, the extraordinary bravery, and also the horrific monsters that he had to deal with, I said, this is going to make a great TV series. Mm-hmm. I felt it in my bones. And so I started that journey to work on developing a TV series. Mm-hmm. Along the way, I learned that the best way to get a TV series off the ground is with a book.
Fair enough.
So I said, well, you know what? I'm going to pivot a little bit here, and we're going to get this book published. So now that it's published, and I'm going to be on speaking tours, mm-hmm. book talks, book signings, the like, I'm going to start to, again, work towards having the TV series made.
Yeah. So with your grandfather's memoir being published in a couple of weeks on International Holocaust Remembrance Day, January 27th of this year, 2026, can you let everybody who's listening know where they might be able to get a copy once it is out there for the public? Of course, your mom's memoir is pretty readily available, Amazon, local libraries, but for the newer publication, your grandfather's memoir, where is the best place for people to get a copy of that?
Well, one of the best places is right here.
Very true.
At hmTV. Also, obviously, Amazon. It's available. Goodreads, it's available there in all formats. I believe in Barnes & Nobles as well. But there's one bookstore in Port Washington where I live. And that bookstore is going to have that. That's called Book Report.
Very nice. So as you mentioned, we are going to have copies available here for purchase all year round, but specifically, we are having an event with you on Sunday, March 22nd at 1 p.m. for any listeners who may want to attend, hear from you personally, get to meet you, and ask you some questions about this entire process if they have any additional questions other than what they've heard in this episode we've had together. So it's really been, I feel in many ways, a full circle moment for us and probably for you as well. You know, as we mentioned earlier, your mom has been an active speaker here on Long Island for a very, very long time, has been involved in so many different programs, speaking at schools, temples, adult organizations, and to now have you be involved here at hmTC and speaking to groups and publishing this book and sharing it with not only our hmTC family, but the wider community here on Long Island, and hopefully even more widely than that. It's great for us to watch because, you know, I've known you for quite some time now and gets to watch this journey and to see where it takes you. Because I know, knowing you, you're not going to stop here. As you said, you kind of alluded, you've got some other plans. So personally, I'm very excited to see where everything goes and where everything takes you. And, you know, we're happy to help you every step along the way. So thank you so much for everything and for being here with us today.
Well, thank you for having me and letting me share this extraordinary journey.
Absolutely. To all of our listeners, thank you so much as always for tuning in. For more information on any episodes of Legacy Chronicles, please check out hmtcli.org. And as mentioned, if you want to learn more about Doron and his family, please read either one of the now published memoirs, The Girl in the Green Sweater or Beneath the Lightless Sky. Thank you so much.